On October 27th, 2023, I uploaded a video I call I Wish Funimation Was Back and Why I Likely Won't Work for Crunchyroll, or in other words, rebranded and split with Crunchyroll. Even to this day, I still do. Part of it was because I've been trying to get a career in acting as someone who filmed a couple commercials and short films, and I've hoped one day that I could move to Texas and audition for Funimation someday. But now that they've been absorbed by Crunchyroll, I'm kinda hesitant because of all these controversies they've had. From monopolizing the industry, with no competition, paying translators an awfully low wage, deleting digital copies of specific titles from the Funimation site, still haven't fully transferred other shows, likely due to contract issues, and one of their most recent controversies is the one where David Wald accused them of mail theft and he quit playing Gajeel in Fairy Tail. He even said that Crunchyroll's abuses were far too numerous. In addition, Alexis Tipton backed him up, saying they no longer get free copies of their work or invited to Christmas parties as they did with Funimation. Now that they're CR, they only treat their voice actors like nothing but products. Since I uploaded my last video in 2023, I now have even more reasons to wish Funimation had stayed separate from Crunchyroll before this even happened, or rebranded and split with them. As for reactions in the comments, it was mixed to positive. Some miss Funimation just as much, with one saying that their setup, which I believe means their streaming site overall was better than Crunchyroll. Meanwhile, others who are still holding these unnecessary grudges against them because of some of the controversies they've had. The biggest one they continue to dwell on is a certain someone who I'm not even gonna name because I, quote, don't want anyone attacking him, unquote, who has been accused of sexual misconduct by countless women, which many of his brainwashed stans who adamantly deny any evidence despite how easy and crystal clear it is. You know what? Forget it. I was being sarcastic about not naming him. I mean, I know everyone knows who I'm talking about. If you've been involved in this for the last 6+ years, Vic Mignogna. So I'm going to reveal my experiences with Funimation and the controversies around them, and give you my thoughts on them. It started around the holidays of 2021, 2 years after Vic's lawsuit was dismissed, and I think he already owed the defendants a few $100,000 if I'm on the right track. The first anime I started watching that also got me to pay more attention to them was Fairy Tail, mainly the English dub of the show. There's just something about the cast, including Todd Haberkorn as Natsu, Jeremy Lee as Lucy, Tia Ballard as Happy, Newton Pittman as Gray, Colleen Klinkenbeard as Urza, R. Bruce Elliott as Makarov, and more, that just makes the dub a classic just as much as the sub. In fact, the Fairy Tail dub is one of those animes that fans consider to be better than the sub. But I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. At the end of each episode I watched, I always asked myself, what happens next? I gotta know. So about halfway through 2022, I finished watching the series and caught up with it. I've even seen the 100 Years Quest anime, though not on Crunchyroll as I don't wish to support a monopoly. Again, as an actor who landed a couple jobs myself, I started to be more open to what I could get into in the future. So if I were to try English dubbing for Japanese anime, Funimation would have been the best way to work with on that. Initially, when the merger with Crunchyroll started, I didn't mind having to work for them, but as time went on and more issues started to spike, I started to get worried and think about the consequences of having only one hub. Of course, you could argue that the whole actor thing is just a personal preference, which sure, I agree, but everything else, competition, or Funny paying their translators a better wage, are still valid reasons to be disappointed about Funimation shutting down. There are a couple of good videos I recommend checking out if you haven't seen. The CR Merger, The End of an Era by Enzo is Tired, It's Impossible to Live as a Crunchyroll Translator, and It's Still Impossible to Live as a Crunchyroll Translator, both by the Canepa Effect. At the time when I uploaded my first I Wish Funimation Was Back video, I was confused about what the negative comments were talking about. Funimation screwed Vic this, and Funimation screwed Vic that. And I'm like, what? Who's Vic? Who are these guys talking about? So I spent several months doing research to understand what was going on. As it turns out, they were talking about Vic Mignogna, who was accused of sexual misconduct by numerous women and teenage girls. So now that I know a bit more about the controversies around Funimation, I wanted to make an update since I made the last video in 2023. At first, while I never came off as an I Stand With Vic guy, I did feel a little sympathy for him, as he did seem like a genuinely nice guy. Although, under the right circumstances, maybe. One of the things that put me in a conflicted position around Funimation in regards to me wishing they were back, whether they were worth working for, and the things they did better than Crunchyroll, was Austin Rose, aka Perception Check's latest 90-minute long Weeb Wars video. For example, we'll highlight the origin of #KickVic, leading to the downfall of Vic's career.
On January 16, 2019, the day Dragon Ball Super Broly premiered, Allison Cook, aka Han Leia, took a swing on Twitter, stating Vic Mignogna is a homophobic, rude asshole who has been creepy to underage female fans for over 10 years, and I have been screaming about this since 2010, but every year, nothing changes. She followed that up with this gem. Hey Funimation, why do you employ a known pedophile? Linking a story from Pretty Ugly Little Liars to prove her point. Regarding the allegation of being a known pedophile, the poll user was actually referring to a story of a voice actor avoiding charges of statutory rape by eloping with his 16-year-old girlfriend in Las Vegas with her mom's consent. That voice actor was Elit Guardiola, not Vic Mignogna. And do you think Allison Cook cared that she had just accused Vic of something another actor had done? No. She's a yaoi fangirl who has apparently hated Vic for at least 10 years. And through this lens, she pushed and shared every negative thing she could find about the guy without giving it a critical glance.
So, according to Perception Check, Han Leia didn't pay attention enough to whether the poll user, who goes by Nyako, was talking about Vic or Guardiola. At first, I actually believed Perception Check, and started to think, was I wrong about wishing Funimation was back? Maybe it's not worth working with them after all. However, one day, I found an article on Medium titled Han Leia, Nyako, Vic Mignogna, and Fact-Checking, written on October 15th, 2019. I've highlighted this a couple times in other videos, but for those who don't know, the beginning of the article reads, among the many false myths circulating between those who are a part of I Stand With Vic, there is one that still bothers me simply because of how easy it is to debunk with some basic research. The allegation that started KickVic was actually about someone else. As shown by the above picture, this is what Twitter user Kirst188 proclaimed to all of Vic's supporters, her tweet getting thousands of likes and hundreds of retweets. To this day, this belief still runs rampant among I Stand With Vic. KickVic started when a Twitter user named Han Leia decided to share an allegation of sexual assault made on Pretty Ugly Little Liars by user Nyako. According to I Stand With Vic, Nyako was not talking about Vic Mignogna, and Han Leia started Vic's cancellation over something that someone else did. But is it true? Let's find out very quickly. So when Han Leia asked Funimation why they employ a known pedophile, she linked to Nyako revealing an allegation that she wrote on December 15th, 2018. It says, although I mostly lurk, I have to chime in here. Vic is a disgusting garbage human. I know this from personal experience. When I was 16, he cornered me in an elevator and put his hand up the back of my skirt. at the time being a stupid fangirl child, despite the fact that it made me feel disgusting and wrong. I just let it happen, and due to other abuse that was going on in my life at the time, I didn't think anyone would believe me if I told anyone. I thought that was weird for not wanting it and feeling used afterward. Vic is a predator. He had been speaking to myself and a friend online and over the phone for months before the con, and had even told us we should meet up and hang out in his room at the con. He said even if we couldn't pay for the con, we could still hang out and have lunch or something. He seemed so nice, he listened to me and let me pour my heart out about my home. He told me it wasn't my fault. He was so kind, and I thought he actually genuinely cared about me. He spent months gaining my trust and my friends' trust. He paid for our food for that day at the con, and even gave my friend a small box filled with Full Metal Alchemist merch and his CDs. Spoilers, they were Bible reading in character voices he had done. He was polite and sweet until I ran into the room alone in an elevator. It was the end of that day for my friend and I, and we just wanted to go crash in another friend's room for a while before heading home. My friend wanted to get upstairs faster, so she took the stairs. I have a hip deformity, so I look perfectly healthy, but going up and down stairs is hard on my hips, and I avoid them if I've been on my feet all day. I was worn out, but still fully awake, and didn't see any issue getting into the elevator with someone who I felt I knew had been so nice to me. But as soon as the doors closed, he put his hand up the back of my skirt and fondled me. He sexually assaulted me, knowing I wouldn't say anything. I tried to tell myself I was mistaken, that maybe it was an accident or I misunderstood what was going on. This had to be my fault because he was so nice to us. Someone who had been so nice to us wouldn't do that. Someone who knew about my home life who told me it wasn't my fault, and they touched me in a way that made me want to vomit. I was 16, and let me stress that there was no way in hell I looked or sounded even close to that age. The previous year, I couldn't even ride the city bus to school alone because I didn't look old enough. Even with my school ID that had my picture on it as proof, wouldn't let me on without an adult because I didn't look old enough to ride alone. My city let 8-year-olds go to school and home on the city bus without supervision. There is no way he thought I was old enough to consent. And neither I or my friend had ever mentioned our ages or that we were in high school when talking to him. Even now, more than 10 years later, I still can pass for a middle school student, and this grown married man thought it was okay to touch me and then act like it never happened as soon as the doors opened. I barely remember the rest of the day. I remember the doors opening and seeing my friend, then nothing until the next morning when I woke up in the mutual friend's room, having locked myself in the bathroom and slept in the tub. One of my friends suggested I may have been drugged at some point, but I only drank out of my own water bottle, my friends' and fast food cups that had not been out of my sight, and none of my friends had any bad reactions to anything. Too long, don't read. I have personally been sexually assaulted by Vic at a con while I was underage. I don't give a frick if you believe me. If my post can stop him from harming even one person, that is enough for me. I just felt that I needed to get it out, and maybe this will keep other fans from being targeted by this pile of garbage. I tried going to the police, but it was too long ago to prosecute. Hopefully one day he'll face justice, but I doubt it. So, Perception Check claims Nyako was actually telling a story about Illic Guardiola eloping with an underage girl in Las Vegas. But ironically, having actually read this post, it mentions no such thing. This is Nyako revealing her first-hand encounter with Vic Mignogna inside an elevator. And you can tell she was talking about Vic because she mentions her friend was gifted a box of merch from Full Metal Alchemist, its main character, who is voiced by Vic himself. And those CDs of Bible reads in character voices means Vic has been known to preach his faith at conventions to the point where he made some people feel bad for not being Christians. Those two things make sense for Vic, but not Guardiola. That's because he had no roles in Full Metal Alchemist, and I couldn't find any source stating what religion he was. If anything, Guardiola did have at least one supporting role in a similar title called Full Metal Panic, but one, they're not in the same universe because they started with different manga writers, and two, Vic played a different character in Full Metal Panic called Kurz Weber, who happens to be a pervert. Funny thing is, that's exactly what Vic was accused of. Anyway, again, I couldn't find any source confirming what religion Guardiola was. Not Christian, not Jew, not Muslim, nothing. Chances are, he might be an atheist, agnostic, or neutral between all groups. So no matter how you look at it, the voice actor Nyako was talking about on December 15th, 2018, which Hanlea would publicly share on Twitter, was 100% about Vic Mignogna. So, regarding the idea that she was knowingly talking about Illic Guardiola all this time, kind of thing, what Perception Check is describing is Nyako's December 16th post, where she actually had a bit of a misunderstanding. See, someone here is asking her if she thought about confronting Vic, and she replied with, "I would consider it if I actually thought he would remember what he did, but because of the kind of person he is, there's no way he even remembers it, because it's normal behavior for him. For him, it was just another day at a con, and I was just another fan. I wouldn't be surprised to find out he's done this to other girls, or that I wasn't the first. I first considered it when Vic married a 16-year-old to avoid statutory rape charges. In 2014, he was facing possible statutory rape charges in Texas, so he took the girl and her mom to Vegas so the mom could sign off on their marriage so he couldn't be charged. The names of the mom and daughter weren't in any of the articles I read about it at the time, but 10 out of 10 it is in the public records for Clark County, Nevada, if you know how to find them. And if he is willing to go that far to cover his own ass, you bet there is other skeevy shit we don't know about. So, what Nyako actually said was that she thought about going after Vic after what he had allegedly did to her, when she heard that he married an underage girl and was facing charges for it. However, in this circumstance, she's incorrect. The voice actor she was overall describing actually was Illic Guardiola, and the biggest evidence that it wasn't Vic was that he was in a decade-long relationship with Michelle Specht, whom Vic cheated on no less than 50 times. So if Nyako was talking about Vic on December 15th, what's going on with that versus her December 16th post? Is she the one who defamed Vic, blaming him for what Illic did and not Hanlea? No. Does she have poor memory issues of which voice actor really touched her? No. When she heard a voice actor had married an underage girl, she assumed it was Vic Mignogna, but unbeknownst to her, it was Illic Guardiola. But that doesn't mean her first-hand encounter was about Guardiola and not Vic all along. You can tell she didn't know it was Guardiola because Nyako mentions that she couldn't identify the mom and daughter she read in the article, which arguably means she couldn't identify the voice actor either. So now that we've taken the time to analyze Nyako's post history, what's going on with Perception Check's analysis on the clip we've highlighted? Well, Austin went with the claim that Nyako knowingly meant to talk about Illic Guardiola and not Vic this whole time. Instead of giving her post history enough critical glance, Austin Rose took the word at face value, lazily wrote it down in her video, and just blindly assumed that Hanlea was some salty yaoi fangirl who held some non-existent grudge against Vic for at least a decade and was just looking for ways to destroy his career without paying attention to what Nyako was saying, which is hilariously ironic. Now, I'm not saying Nyako's allegation is 100% truthful. I'm highlighting it to explain one of the things that went wrong with Perception Check's final Weeb Wars video. What we've learned through basic research is about Nyako's alleged bad first-hand encounter with Vic inside an elevator. Years later, when she heard about Guardiola's arrest, she assumed that it was Vic who was the one that was getting arrested. Then on January 17th, 2019, Hanlea linked Nyako's December 15th post, which was without a doubt about Vic Mignogna. This resulted Mars Girl, who genuinely met Vic at least 3 times, to create the hashtag #KickVic. So after reading the fact-checking article, that became one of the first steps to understanding what kind of person Vic is and how emotionally driven his defenders can be. They promote confirmation bias as a substitute for intellectual intelligence, meaning they believe misinformation can be easily debunked by basing their arguments on how they feel personally of small portions they were exposed to overall, rather than taking the time and patience to look at the entire information to make sense of what's going on. I also learned to be aware of which videos I watch on YouTube to understand the history of Vic's loss. In other words, walk away from Perception Check and any personality who thinks just like her. Another step that helped me understand Vic's case was 2 Reddit sources. The first was a user called P. Dillahanty commenting that Vic admitted doing weird creepy things and advises not to listen to what other people say, just what Vic admits under oath. Then I've read some of the things that the person said based on the highlighted pages, from his fans calling him the Führer, cheating on his fiancée at least 5 to 50 times, hiring prostitutes, and pulling countless women's hair scalps. 2 of them being Monica Rial and Jamie Markey. Other things he admitted was inviting his fans to his hotel room to ask them for sex. At the end, the user argued that while his actions may not be illegal, he sued them for defamation, which means he didn't do any of the things he was accused of, but admitted many of them were true. The second one I found was a thread titled Vic Mignogna Lawsuit Update Thread, featuring a long list of documents released from the official Texas court, uploaded by Sound of One Hand Clapping. One of the papers I read was Defendant Jamie Markey's motion pursuant to the Texas Citizens Participation Act, explaining more about Vic pulling Jamie's hair. To highlight why it's wrong for Vic to admit this, on page 6, paragraph 9 reads, "While sworn under oath in his deposition, plaintiff plainly admitted to assaulting plaintiff, or rather Jamie, misspelling I think, in exactly the same manner as described by Jamie in her statement."
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love your hair. And she's like, I know, I just got it. And I walked around the counter, and I was kind of standing there, kind of flipping it, and like, oh my gosh, it's really beautiful. I love it. And I put my hand up in the bottom of it, and I'm like, oh, this is great.
Though the camera veered slightly to the right just before, plaintiff even gestured on camera about the tight grasp he had over Jamie. So, Vic going to court and saying he pulled her hair and making a demonstration counts as evidence that he did assault Jamie Markey. Of course, I know there are Vic stans who are too stubborn and ignorant to understand this and will pretend it doesn't exist, but for those who acknowledge he did admit it, a common defense they try to counter with is using what Vic said in terms of what he thought the context was.
It was not painful, it was not hurtful, it was not...
So at best she can't tell the difference between this and this, or she's lying.
But that's another issue with I Stand With Vic. Continuing with what paragraph 9 says, if plaintiff objects to Jamie's characterization of the hair pulling incident, his appropriate course of action would be to have not pulled her hair in the first place. This is bolstered by plaintiff's own admission that individuals can perceive the same situation differently, and that Miss Markey could have perceived her hair being pulled differently than plaintiff did. Nothing in this legal action or any other forum can change the fact that what Jamie reported in her statement really happened, and she has a constitutional right to speak out about it, a right which is protected by, among others, the TCPA. In other words, a defamation lawsuit isn't a matter of a woman misunderstanding a man's intentions, it's a matter of a man calling a woman a liar and saying that the incidents she described never happened at all. It doesn't matter what Vic intended when he pulled Jamie's hair to the court. if you admit what you were accused of, that weakens your defense. As a result, his lawsuit was already over before it got anywhere. Also, not sure if you know, but it genuinely is possible to sexually assault someone without realizing it. Regardless of what Vic thought, if you touch someone in a way that made them uncomfortable and without their consent, you have assaulted them. So if there's anything I've learned, there's a difference between proving an accusation to have never happened at all and confirming it but having a different opinion on the context. I stand with Vic, just never thought about it, either because they're not educated well enough, going by Vic's word alone is the only option they have to defend him, or they just don't care. Meanwhile, Ty Beard, Vic's lawyer, knows nothing about defamation. His practices include litigation, transactions acquisitions, mergers, estate planning, private equality transactions, strategic planning, and conflict negotiation, but defamation is not listed. Because of this, Ty Beard didn't prepare Vic for what was coming, and according to Mars Girl, the Minnesota-based YouTube streamer and shock jock Nick Rekieta, who started the GoFundMe campaign Vic Kicks Back, happens to have family members in Texas and is a trust fund child.
So in his initial video about Vic's case, Nick tries to summarize everything that has happened up to this point, and of course he lies and says, I was the person that started everything.
The day after the Broly movie releases, Kaylin Saucedo, aka Mars Girl, drops this pair of tweets, which really seems to have kicked off the firestorm.
As a reminder, I know that these guys are often incredibly terrible about how linear time works, but the events of January 16th most definitely took place before the events of January 17th. Make of that what you will. He explains how Vic got let go from his jobs and how conventions across the country have been canceling his guest appearances, and then finally suggests that Vic should be entertaining the idea of a lawsuit against multiple parties. In fact, I'm the first name he suggests could possibly come up should Vic decide to start suing people.
First of all, everyone I just named, Saucedo, Marchi, Rial, Rooster Teeth, and Funimation, all get sued.
He then starts suggesting Funimation, a bunch of conventions, pretty much any name he can think of, trying to drum up the idea that somebody should be sued. Maybe not a, wow, we definitely need to make sure these people get sued, just throwing anything at the wall that could possibly stick. He then instructs people to start following absolutely everybody talking shit about Vic Mignogna, archiving everything, and then emailing it to Nick so that Nick can then email it to Vic so that he can begin to pursue a lawsuit.
I want to be able to immediately give the information to Vic and his attorneys so that they don't have to sift through all of this stuff. It's going to save them time. It's going to save Vic money. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to archive anything and everything from important verifiable people. People who are identifiable and have ties to Vic in some way and are doing this, they're the ripest targets.
And to be clear, at this point in time, Nick has never so much as spoken a word to Vic. The two of them do not know each other. Despite that, Nick is extremely eager to jump into the ring and start providing Vic with help and backup. That's already kind of weird, but hey, maybe he's just a guy who really truly believes that Vic is just an innocent victim of cancel culture here, and he's just so bothered by it that he can't help but want to do what he believes is the right thing and help out a guy who's down on his luck. Really, he's performing a charity here. Very cleverly titled Vic Kicks Back, part of the description for the fundraising reads, Vic has tried to mitigate the situation with public statements, and the attacks on him and his character persist. Anyone who knows Vic knows he would never ask for this and does not want this course of action. When your opponents leave you no choice, you eventually have to kick back. Nick also very carefully states in the description that he is not actually Vic's lawyer, but that he knows who is, although not not immediately upon launch, an update to the page states that the beneficiary has changed to a specific law firm's IOLTA account, otherwise known as an interest on lawyers' trust accounts. This means that all the money getting donated to the GoFundMe was going straight to Vic's lawyer. But basically, Nick himself can't easily represent Vic. He's only licensed to practice law in Minnesota, and Vic lives in Texas and likely would want to open up his potential lawsuit there. Just as a reminder, guys, Vic at this point in the story still has not actually confirmed that he is going to be doing a lawsuit. As we would find out several months later, Nick had set up this GoFundMe account before ever contacting Vic, let alone asking him for permission to do it for him, which is just kind of fucking weird. On February 20th, Vic would confirm via Twitter that he finally spoke with Nick and gave his blessing to allow the GoFundMe to be used to raise money from his fans and begin the process of an upcoming lawsuit. I had hoped that my apologies and acknowledgements, both public and private, would be received, but I have now very reluctantly retained a law firm as my last and only recourse to attempt to salvage my reputation and my 20-year career in this industry. That's right, Vic only apologized thinking that an apology would get him out of his problems. But when being sorry didn't work, he stopped being sorry and decided retaliation was the better way to go. A friend expressed a desire to set up a GoFundMe for legal expenses. Remember, Vic only just talked to Nick for the first time in the last couple of days. Now, suddenly, Nick is Vic's friend because he just backed a dump truck full of money up to a law firm to help him solve his problems. Any surplus will go to the Salvation Army Dallas Domestic Violence and Abuse Shelters. So not only is he doing a weird thing by threatening to sue people he may have harassed in the first place, but also, if there's any money left over, he wants to give it to the Salvation Army, known for its great services, like firing LGBTQ caseworkers, talking about how being gay is a sin, and kicking gay people out of homeless shelters. So you know, this is off to a great start. Within about the first month, the GoFundMe had already raised over $100,000, and Nick raised the limit to $200,000. The fundraiser hit that goal by July, causing Nick to raise the goal one final time to $300,000. And while Nick would not close that fundraiser for 5 years, it would slowly creep up over time to very nearly reach that final goal. So again, who was this money going to? Allow me to introduce you to Ty Beard, senior partner of the law offices of Beard, Harris, Bullock, Hughes, based out of Tyler, Texas, a small city just less than a 2 hours drive east from Dallas. Ty had been practicing law at that point in time for about 23 years, with legal knowledge in areas like business law, estate planning, mergers and acquisitions. You know, it's funny. See, I think we all thought that Vic was going to be suing people and businesses for defamation, or maybe for wrongful termination, but prior to 2019, it seems like all Ty Beard deals in is, like, estate law. And I don't know if you know this or not, but estate law is an entirely separate practice from defamation. It's just like how you wouldn't ask a dentist to perform open heart surgery on you. Sure, they're both some kind of doctor, but they work on totally different things. What in God's name is this random ass estate lawyer doing on an anime voice actor man's defamation lawsuit? You really couldn't find another lawyer in the entire state of Texas to do this? Well, suddenly it makes a whole lot of sense when you find out that Nick Rekieta is a trust fund baby with family in Texas, and that Ty Beard is the lawyer handling his family's estate. There's a lot that you might be able to infer from this, although it's not entirely possible to prove anything outside of speculation. But if nothing else, this could end up being an extremely lucrative move for somebody that Nick knows personally, whether that person he knows was actually right for the job or not. Oh, but don't worry, by April of 2019, Ty Beard made absolutely sure to update his business profile to include the practice areas of defamation and tortious interference, right there at the very top. There, glad we got all that sorted out. And if you're wondering whether or not a guy doing baby's first defamation lawsuit was particularly good at it or not, boy, do I have some America's Funniest Home Videos moments for you coming up later. But man, did Vic's legion of sycophant followers eat this shit up. Now that the GoFundMe was out there and a lawyer was named, it didn't matter whether or not that lawyer was actually the right person for the job. They were convinced this was gonna be the move that brought all of these lying bitches to their knees. And suddenly, Ty Beard was being presented like he was fucking Superman. Just the absolute ubermensch of lawyers.
So, the only reason Nick and Ty got themselves in the Vic Mignogna drama was to make money for their own purposes, and the former has apparently scammed thousands of Vic stans out of their money, which is illegal. But I guess because their devotion for him and resentment towards Monica, Jamie, and other alleged victims are too strong, they don't seem to care. Because to them, this was the only option they had to give the victims payback and shut them up.
If Mr. Rekieta is a con artist and he is just taking money and doing whatever with it that is coming from your fans, not your problem.
Objection form.
I have nothing to do with it.
Okay, so not your problem, right?
Correct.
All right.
So I guess that just further proves that Vic's case was just a petty slap suit, right? On top of Beard and Rekieta's lack of knowledge of a defamation lawsuit, when Vic filed his affidavit on August 31st, 2019, which was past the deadline of August 30th, he changed his response to Jamie's accusation, saying he never pulled her hair, whispered anything sexual to her, or pressed her lips on her ear. On September 3rd, Sean Lemoyne filed a document called Omnibus Objections and objected what Vic said as impermissible, sham, contradictory, and failure to establish basis for his personal knowledge of what comment Jamie believed to be suggestive. Ruling, sustained, denied. If you've been dealing with this for the past 6 years, you know what went wrong with the case. Vic was unprepared, he couldn't make up his mind, Ty Beard was lazy, and he was wasting time going on live streams with Rekieta, encouraging harassment against the victims, and Vic lost. So, at the end of the day, I have my reasons for siding with the victims, including Monica and Jamie, even if some of the things they said on Twitter were not the best. Not only do I recommend Mars Girl's most recent 11-hour-long document, but if you'd like to know more about why I'm standing with the victims, I would suggest watching my videos, Did Han Leia Really Confuse Vic Mignogna for Elec Guardiola? Monica Rial is not lying about Vic and Dolan? And Todd Habercorn is not a Vic Mignogna defender. I'll even give you the link to the Reddit article, Vic Mignogna Lawsuit Update Thread, where you can read the documents for yourself. And additionally, disproving the rumors of Chris Sabat having a casting couch by Skiggs. The next controversy I'm going to talk about is Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Does that sound familiar? Now, I haven't seen much of the series, but from what I've heard, it's about a woman who's an average office worker and has a tedious life until she rescues a female dragon named Toru. She has the ability to change into a human woman with dragon horns and a tail. She moves in with Kobayashi and wants to pay her back. Even a couple other female dragons who have the same ability as Toru come into the human world, and one of the things about the characters is that they don't understand the norms of the human world. For the dub, while the voice acting and energetic performances were praised, some of the dialogue has spiked controversy on the internet for about... Wait. Holy moly! 8 years? Well, apparently since 2017, yeah. One of the most discussed lines I've seen regarding Dragon Maid is the 12th episode. Jamie Markey, one of Vic's assault victims, was the scriptwriter for the English version of the show. She also had a role playing the character of Lukua, who was written to be laid back, carefree, and often seen smiling so much. Because of her appearance, she comes off as flirty sometimes, wears a lot of revealing clothes, and occasionally uses her appeal to get what she wants. In the 12th episode of the show, Lukua arrives at the apartment wearing a longer shirt and pants, and when Toru asks what was going on with that, Lukua gives 2 different answers in the sub versus dub.
何ですかその格好。いつも言われるから露出度を抑えたんだ。どうかな。 次は体を変えるといいですよ。
What are you wearing that for? Oh, those pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves. So I changed clothes.
Give it a week, they'll be begging you to change back.
Huh?
Now, in the Japanese version, Luko was saying that she wanted to change her clothing because she noticed how revealing they were, and the comment Toru made was apparently a joke about how even wearing longer-sleeved clothing won't completely cover her up. The argument most people make online about the dub, however, is that the patriarchy line was forcing politics into the scene, making it something completely different. Because of this, they accuse Jamie Marchi of trying to push some kind of feminist agenda. When you go on YouTube and type in things like Dragon Maid controversy or anime localization, you find a lot of videos, particularly made by Rev Says Desu and Asmongold, often using the word woke for their titles. While both YouTubers are shown to be on the same page, given that one has appeared in the other's videos, one concerning thing I find is the kind of titles they use contradict each other by labeling Miss Marchi as a localizer in some, or translator in others. Here's the thing. Jamie is not a translator or localizer. She's a script writer. Translation and localization are not the same thing either. In early 2024, the YouTuber Asaratha HS posted a video called Why Are People Mad at Anime Localizers? In it, he explains the real definitions of translation and localization and uses the phrase I love you to make an example of the cultural meaning in English versus Japanese.
To really get into this topic, there are two primary distinguishing factors we have to understand. Translation does not equal localization. Sometimes these two terms are conflated, whether it be ignorance or just because it's a pain sometimes to have to define both of them in a conversation. Translation can refer to a technical translation, for lack of a better term, something that purely focuses on one-to-one accuracy of the words used while still being readable. Localization is the interpretation and translation of culture, which can be really hard. Japanese, unfortunately, to some, is not like English, not even close. Asian languages are known for having quite complex wordplay or certain things not even being one-to-one translatable. The easiest example is, I love you. In English, if you said I love you, people generally get the gist of it. In Japanese, you have a few variations. Suki, which seems to be sort of informal or more casual way of saying I love you, like for love confessions and I believe close friendships. Then there's daisuki, which is suki but on a new level. It's a bit weightier than just saying suki, and you would often hear this between couples that have maybe moved out of the honeymoon phase. There's also the word koi, which I will be honest, I don't understand all too well, but from what I'm aware of, it is also another way of referring to romantic love. I've also seen people describe it as, quote, selfish love, whatever that means. Then there is ai, or how people would use it in the context of aishiteru. Generally, this is a game-changing phrase. It's intense on another level, used for, like, extremely moving events. Of course, not everyone adheres to this social expectation, but it's strong and to some overbearing. It's very possible I got some of these definitions a little wrong, as I am not fluent in Japanese, but that should help paint a picture of how nuanced and complex even just one word can become when trying to convert from Japanese to English, and a one-to-one translation might not catch all of the nuances present in the culture of the language, and that's when localization comes in, to help us better understand the intent behind the language used that English, or of course other languages, might not have the ability to pick up by virtue of not speaking Japanese or not being too familiar with Japanese culture.
So if Jamie was a translator for Dragon Maid, her job would be to convert what the Japanese voices are saying to English subtitles. She would aim for accuracy, fidelity to the original meaning. But according to Anime News Network, the translators for the show, at least in America, were actually John Pickett and Stephen J. Simmons. If Jamie was a localizer, it means her goal would be to adapt the content, like adjusting humor, idioms, references, and visuals to resonate with its target audience. But since she's a scriptwriter, that means her job is to adapt the translated dialogue in Japanese for the American voices so that the lines naturally match the pre-animated mouth movements. Now, don't get me wrong, dubbed script writing may at least be a type of localization, but localization isn't about writing dubbed scripts alone, so as a result, Jamie Marchi is not a complete localizer. This is important to think about because, in terms of Rev calling Jamie a localizer, or Asmongold calling her a translator, it looks like those terms plus woke have become buzzwords to make their titles engaging for their viewers, that it seems like they don't care what those words mean anymore. When Rev or Asmongold use a character from Dragon Maid, or a picture of Miss Marky herself in their thumbnails, their viewers know what to expect. They click on these videos to watch them attack her, or at least say things to make her look evil, so they go in the comments and rip on her anyway. Even if Asmongold, for example, says it was never his intent to do any of that, according to him in one of his reaction videos, many of his followers don't really care what he meant. They still blame her for getting Vic Mignogna terminated from Funimation when she had nothing to do with it. Vic was actually terminated on January 29th, 2019. This was when Sony executive Tammy Denbo did the Funimation investigation on January 22nd. Then on the 29th, Vic was notified that he was no longer getting any work. So Jamie revealed her story after Vic was removed. But even if you did show them evidence, like in the screenshot here, Vic Stans and Asmongold viewers don't care what the document says. They don't like victims of sexual harassment, so they have to look for someone to blame his termination on, and they still attack Jamie. While I was watching Asaratha's video, he gave viewers a link to another video called What's Actually Wrong with the Dragon Maid Dub by the Cartoon Cypher, which I also took a look at. While he's in full support of anime localization, he noted that the Dragon Maid dub script direction overall had issues, and the more likelihood of them is that the patriarchy line, in particular, had more to do with the reason Lukua changed her clothing and what kind of character she comes off as, not because Jamie was forcing politics in the show.
What are you wearing that for?
Oh, those pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves, so I changed clothes.
Give it a week, they'll be begging you to change back.
Huh?
This take makes it seem like Lukua covered up because she felt pressured to, rather than because she wanted to. And the gentle tone she says it with almost makes it sound sarcastic. Which is not how Lukua is presented at all in the Japanese version. The dragons in general are meant to be out of touch, so this line kind of flies in the face of one of the show's main conceits. Maybe some people who hadn't seen the subbed version could have found the joke funny on its own, but even then, patriarchal societal demands is a very charged phrase. It's not something particularly lighthearted or casual, so it jumps right out at you, and in our opinion, for the wrong reason.
I can kinda see where he's coming from. Considering she's a dragon from another world and doesn't understand the human society, it probably wouldn't make sense for Lukua to be capable of sarcasm or know what patriarchy means. However, some people argue that because she says the word patriarchy only once and isn't mentioned again, they don't see how it affects the story as a whole or Lukua's relationship with the cast. The core of the show is a fish out of water kind of thing, where dragons live in the human world and the development of the characters' relationships. So even if it wasn't present in the Japanese version, I can see where they're coming from with that, especially if Jamie intended this to be a joke. Another line he talks about is Kobayashi's response to Toru confessing her feelings to her, the meaning of the context in the Japanese version versus English version of the anime, compares them to the manga, and points out the Japanese government's views on LGBT plus couples.
It's you! I love you, Miss Kobayashi!
You gonna eat me?
No, not like that! Like sexually!
I'm not into women or dragons.
This here is another example of taking a pretty ordinary line and making it more of a direct joke or one-liner. But unlike the patriarchy example, I didn't even notice that this line had such different implications until others pointed it out to me, arguably having a domino effect on the rest of the dub.
食べる気？違います。性的にです。私は女なんだが。
In Yuri's stories, a phrase like, "but I'm a woman," or "but we're both girls," is something of a genre trope. One of the female leads will say it near the start only for her to ironically end up falling in love with a woman later on. And as mentioned, Jamie did take credit for the line and tried explaining her reasoning, with one of them being that she didn't want the implication to be that Kobayashi thought there was something wrong with a woman being sexually attracted to another woman, while also filling the lip flaps. And honestly, I can see where she's coming from. Well, to a point. Kobayashi's response is meant to be a rejection of Toru's feelings. But responding to advances from someone by passively stating that they just happen to be the same sex does feel like a bit of an affirmation that that's inherently weird or unnatural. It's not an explicit no, but it is dismissive in a potentially hurtful way. Even the official manga translation, which came out just before the anime aired, has Kobayashi say that's not good either, with regards to whether Toru wants to eat Kobayashi or have sex with her. From what we understand, Japan has, generally speaking, been more conservative when it comes to the public view of LGBT+ couples. That isn't to say everything is set in stone though, and things could change. Hopefully for the better.
I get the explanation of the Yuri trope he described, but if I understand what he means about Japan being more conservative correctly, I think it means they don't have as much legal rights for LGBT+ people as the US. If that's what the author was going for when Kobayashi said, "but I'm a woman," to indicate she felt there was something wrong with relationships between two people of the same gender, I kinda get where they're coming from. On the other hand, with the "but I'm not into women or dragons" line, while some people argue that makes her sound more definitively straight, and takes away the ambiguity of her possible feelings for Toru, others argue it could be a case of Kobayashi not knowing her sexuality initially, and then discovering it as the series progresses. Anyone who is bi or hasn't had crushes on anyone of the same sex yet have felt that way. Another YouTuber who is also a supporter of localization as well as fluent in Japanese, and has worked on anime as a translator and localizer I'd like to reference, is Sarah Moon. She's made a lot of videos about translation and localization. Because of this, one of them I'd like to highlight is her Translation versus Localization, an actual example video. Here, she demonstrates a scene she wrote, loosely based on an otame game she once worked on.
I did a video earlier in the summer on the case for localization, why I prefer as a professional anime translator to localize my translations versus make them more literal, what is localizing, what is literal, and check that video out if you have not already. I'm putting a card up by my face right now as I speak. Anyway, that script wound up getting a little long for the video that I had in mind, so there was some parts that I had to cut out. And there was one section in there that I wanted to show you guys a real-life example of something that I have translated in a game, in an otome game. Those are sort of like light novels, but in game form, sort of like a choose-your-own-adventure game, but not really. That's a whole other topic. But anyway, a little scene, little dialogue that I translated in an otome game. I want to show you guys a real-life example of how I would localize that versus translate that. So let's just get to it. So first, I sign NDAs with my agency, which means I'm not allowed to disclose details about the projects that I translate. It's probably safe for me to say like the title of a series that I've translated in the past, but I'm paranoid, so I'm not even going to say the title of the series. And as such, I've changed the names of the characters just to make it a little less obvious what this game is. So here's the scene. Here's the setup for this scene. You name in brackets with little coding. That's usually how I write MC, the player, your name, because you can input whatever name you want in there. So she's name, basically, is her name. MC, a lot of fans will call the main character of an otome game. Anyway, you, MC, name, and your boyfriend, Toya, are visiting Kurosaki, a friend of his who runs a shop. You're visiting Kurosaki at his shop. And this is how the exchange in Japanese went. Kurosaki says, "Ya, name-chan, irashai." And then the narration says, "Kurosaki-san wa watashi o mitsukeru to nikoyaka ni mukaete kureru." And then Toya says, "Chotto, shinyu no ore no koto wa mushi suru wake?" And then Kurosaki responds, "Nanda ita no ka, Toya?" And then Toya responds with, "Hidoi!" And then the narration says, "Futari no aikawarazu no yaritori ni watashi wa omowazu waratte shimatta." So that's the little excerpt, the little scene. And now I'm going to break it down. But before I break it down, I'm going to give you my complete localization of this exchange. So this is if this dialogue were originally written in English instead of being translated from one language to another, this is how it would sound. I translate it this way, or I localize it this way rather, so that it does not sound like it was a translation. So it sounds like it was originally written in English. And I'm preserving the tone and personality of the characters in doing so. So anyway, Kurosaki says, Hi, name, missed you, boo. Kurosaki smiles and waves cheerily when he sees me. Toya, hey, what am I, chopped liver? Kurosaki, oh, hi, Toya, didn't see you there. Toya, you suck! I can't help but giggle at their usual banter. So now let's actually break down how I got to this localization. Those of you who understand Japanese might have been like, what? He never said boo. What? He never said suck. He never said liver. So I'm going to explain how I got to that localization. So the first line, Kurosaki says, ya, name-chan, irashai. So for one thing, we don't have chan in English. A lot of amateur translators, fan translators, and anime fans would like the chan kept in. I disagree with that. I think that it should be left out because we just don't have that equivalent in English, and a lot of anime fans, even if they think they know what chan means, they really don't. It really just does not have the same emotional impact for us as it does to people who were born and raised in Japan and who were immersed in the culture and know the language. So I disagree with keeping chan in. That's already probably alienated a bunch of you, and you're probably like, dislike! And it's like, hey, let me state my case. So anyway, chan, it's a cutesy suffix for a name. And by adding the chan to the end of her name, he's illustrating that either she is younger than him, like that's kind of an acceptable way to address someone who's younger than you, is you add the chan. And it's not to put the person down. It's not, it's just something they do. They don't even really think about it. Aha, I am putting her down and demonstrating that I'm older by calling her chan. It's like, no, they don't think about it. They just call you chan. That's cutesy. It's kind of friendly, and it's demonstrating that, kind of an endearing way that you're superior to a person. And then ya is this sort of flirty way of saying, hey there, hi. And then irashai is the short version of irashaimase, which is what a shopkeep would say to people who enter their store. So even though it's technically welcome, like welcome to my store, we just don't really have irashai or irashaimase in American culture, in English. It's something that they say without a second thought. Irashai, irashai, irashai. Like, they're not consciously thinking, welcome, I wish you a warm welcome to my store. So I did not translate irashai as welcome. So the whole thought here, let's just look at the whole thing that's happening here. He's being flirty. He's saying ya instead of konnichiwa, which would be like the polite generic hello, or yo, which would be the more casual, hey there, friend, person with whom I am casual. But he's saying ya, which is more like flirty. And then adding the chan to the end of her name, which makes it kind of even cutesy or flirtier. So he's being really flirty here. And then he's saying irashai, which is like, it's a greeting, really. As a shopkeep, it's a greeting. Yes, it technically means welcome, but it's like he's a shopkeep and he is greeting her. So he's being flirty with her and he's greeting her. So I really had to put in there that he was flirting with her. And a really easy way of doing that is to have him call her some kind of like pet name, nickname thing. The ya and the chan, that really lead to that. So I added boo in there. So I said, hi, name, and then I added missed you, boo. Because another part of this story, they're seeing him and they haven't seen him in a while. I forgot to add that to the build up to this dialogue. Yeah, it's been a while since they've seen him. So if you haven't seen someone in a while, you might say missed you. Missed you is kind of a cutesy, flirty thing to say, and then the boo at the end is cutesy, and he's kind of being cutesy and flirty. So hi, name, missed you, boo. The next line, Kurosaki-san wa watashi o mitsukeru to, mitsukeru is to find someone, to locate someone. So that literally means when Kurosaki sees me. Nikoyaka ni is like smilingly. Mukaete kureru is like greets me, welcomes me. So when Kurosaki sees me, he greets me smilingly is like the very literal way of translating that. So I translated that. I localized that as Kurosaki smiles and waves cheerily when he sees me. So I added the waves. They wouldn't really do waving as much in Japanese culture, but we would do that in Western culture. So that's why I added the waving. The mukaete kureru, the welcoming, waving, that kind of has that same feel to it. You're welcoming somebody. Or it's not even necessarily you're welcoming. Mukaete kureru means like to greet, to welcome and greet someone, sort of. So it's like, hey, name, missed you, boo. And then the next line, so Toya says, chotto! Exclamation point. So chotto literally means a little. So if I were translating that super literally, he would be saying, a little! And that makes no sense whatsoever. Usually, hey is pretty much the way, that's the way most amateurs would translate that as well, and that's pretty correct. It's like, hey, whoa there, easy mister. It's that kind of feeling to it. Shinyu no ore. So shinyu is best friend, ore is me, masculine, so I, your best friend. Shinyu no ore no koto. So ore no koto or watashi no koto is like me. It's like about me. Me as a thing, basically. So me, your best friend. Wa, so as for me, your best friend. Mushi suru wake. Mushi suru is to ignore someone. And then wake, that's kind of hard to translate. But if you add that at the end of something, there was one character in Fruits Basket. God, I forget his name. I think he was the ram character. But he would always add wake with a question at the end of something. It's kind of rude. Wake is sort of like the reason for something. Yeah, so I mean, it's sort of like explain to me why everything that came before that. So it's like shinyu no ore no koto wa mushi suru means to ignore me, your best friend. And then wake, it's like, why would you ignore me, your best friend? That's kind of literally what that sentence means. So like, hey, I'm your best friend. Why are you ignoring me? Or, hey, why are you ignoring me? Your best friend. That would be the literal translation of what he just said. But like I said, it's kind of rude. It has attitude. That wake at the end with the question mark it's very, very rude and attitudey. Again, if you're familiar with Fruits Basket, there's that one character. I think it's the ram. It's the kid who's like possessed. And he does wake, at like all of his sentences, especially to Toru, are like that because he's just rude to her. But anyway, yeah, that. So basically, let's look at this entire sentence. He's indignant. He's angry at his best friend for, flirting with his girlfriend while ignoring him. And it's like, dude, we're best friends. It's like that kind of indignant and kind of rude retort, and it's also kind of funny to us, the reader. Also, this character that's in this game is himself an entertainer and a comedian. So taking all of those things into account with that sentence, instead of translating it as, hey, I'm your best friend, why are you ignoring me? I localize that as, hey, what am I, chopped liver? So that's kind of a cliche, to ask that. But it's kind of funny, it's kind of witty. And it's expressing that sentiment. He's being sassy in that retort. He's still expressing the same thing. What am I, chopped liver is kind of like, hey, why are you ignoring me like I'm chopped liver? It's pretty much expressing the exact same sentiment, but it has the sass, it has the wit that we're looking at in the original Japanese, and then it expresses it so much better in English. Even though there was no chopped, there was no liver in the original Japanese, that's really the essence of what it means in English. Now the next line in Japanese, Kurosaki says, Nanda ita no ka toya. So nanda means what, but it also kind of means like, oh. Ita no ka, so ita is the past tense of iru, which is to be. No ka is like a question mark. So basically, itanoka is, oh, you were there. There's no pronoun you in there, but it's implied. Toya, when he says his name afterwards. So it's literally, what, Toya, you were there? Or, oh, Toya, you were there. That's literally what that means. Okay? Sounds weird though, right? Nobody talks like that. If this scene were happening originally in English, what would someone say? So let's look at the tone and what Kurosaki is trying to express and his attitude and everything about this sentence. So, Nanda ita no ka toya, actually this is a very commonly used, like sassy, witty burn in Japanese scenes. I've seen it a lot. So it's basically, he's like, oh, I didn't see you there. Like, oh, you were there? It's like basically just reinforcing that, oh, like, I don't care about you. I'm going to flirt with your girlfriend. Oh, you were there? Toya is like yelling at him and giving him these sick burns. Like, what am I, chopped liver? And then Kurosaki has to retort with another burn. Like, oh, I didn't see you there. So you could go with, hey, I didn't see you there. Or, oh, Toya, I didn't know you were here. That kind of retort. I went with, oh, didn't see you there, Toya. And I added a hi in there, just be like more casual, like, oh, hi, Toya, didn't see you there. Just to contrast with the way he greeted MC or name. Hi, name, missed you, boo. And then his best friend's like, oh, hey, oh, hi, didn't see you there. So I really wanted that contrast. I wanted the burn. I wanted the sass. I wanted the attitude. I wanted that casual rudeness in response to Toya's over the top, hey, what am I, chopped liver? And it's like, oh, hi Toya, didn't see you there. So I wanted to show that contrast, be kind of sarcastic, and also be sassy and have the attitude in there. The next line, Toya says, hidoi! And if you watch enough anime, you know that that means cruel, basically. Hidoi, it's an adjective that means something is cruel. And oftentimes I'll see it translated as how cruel or that's cruel. But here's the question I'm going to ask. How many of you guys have ever actually said that? And how many of you guys have actually heard somebody say that? Like, how cruel! Like, would you say that to somebody if they did something mean to you? Like, if they grabbed your hair, would you say, how cruel? Like, I certainly would not say that. Nobody I know would say that. Nobody I've seen in any TV show would really say that, unless they're like, I don't know, a princess, like, oh, how cruel, unhand me, you scurvy cur. I don't know, like, it's just not really the way we talk in modern English. So even though it literally means cruel, I do not think that translating hidoi as how cruel is the way to go. It's just not natural. It's not the way we talk. What we would say in a situation like that, he's just like, God damn it, you got me. Like, that was a sick burn. And I'm just frustrated now, and so I'm just going to insult you. Kind of indignantly like a child. So I went with, you suck! That's kind of what we would say in that sort of situation. Another thing, actually the way that I translated it in the game was lame with an exclamation point. So think of anything like that. Just get a little more outside the box, get a little more creative, and think, okay, how would I in that situation, or how would a character like Toya in that situation express that sentiment of, I'm just going to yell in indignation because you're being mean to me, and you're also like clearly not as upset about this exchange as I am. You know, how would I express that? And so I went in this case with, you suck! And the last line of narration, futari no aikawaratsu no yaritori ni. So futari is two people, literally, but it means the two men. Futari no, so the two men's. Aikawaratsu is like unchanging. It's like, they're back to their old tricks. It's like, this is nothing new. Aikawaratsu no, so again, we're adding more possessiveness to this sentence. Yaritori ni, so yaritori is like the giving tit for tat, the banter, the back and forth between two people. So the unchanging or the normal back and forth between those people, those two people, the two boys. Ni, so at or from or by the usual back and forth between those two men. Watashi wa omowazu, watashi wa I, omowazu, without thinking, waratte shimatta, so that means I laughed and it was an accident. I shouldn't have really laughed. That's what the shimatta part adds to that. So I often translate omowazu waratte shimatta or omowazu waratte shimau. I often translate that as like, I can't help but laugh. And that expression comes up so many times in Otome games. Like, I can't help but smile, I can't help but laugh, I can't help but swoon. It's like, it's everywhere in there. I feel like I almost use it too much, but they use it too much. It's their fault, not mine. But anyway, omowazu waratte shimatta, without meaning to, I laughed, or I can't help but laugh. I just think that flows a lot better. So I can't help but giggle at their usual banter. So that's a lot more straightforward than localized. I think you'll see from this example that the narration, those lines are a little less flavorful, a little more on the literal-ish side, whereas the dialogue has a little more opportunity for localization.
Her demonstration couldn't be any clearer. She isn't just explaining what it's like to translate Japanese into English, but also the context around what the characters mean in the specific scenarios, and why it's necessary to adapt the dialogue based on what terms Americans use in the same situations Japanese people engage in. The second video is Feminist SJW Anime Translators, which features Dragon Maid. It's about 50 minutes long, but to give a brief synopsis, it's part satire and part educational. She swaps between two characters as she analyzes the subbed version, dubbed version, accuracy, the online backlash, and the toxicity around it. Sarah actually praised the Dragon Maid dub for being as faithful to the Japanese version as it is, even though the dubbed voices said some things that the subbed voices didn't.
To understand whether or not these dub translations were indeed faithful or unfaithful to the original Japanese, you would first have to understand Japanese. Check. And you'd have to watch the entire series through in both the original Japanese and the English dubs, which I did. The first time I watched Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid all the way through start to finish was in the original Japanese language with the subtitles. I generally found the subs to be very well done, with no glaring mistranslations, and they were very faithful to the original characters and overall tone of the series. And then I watched the Funimation English dub. Jamie Markey wrote the script for the English dub, and I have to say that the dub is very good! Oh my god, the way the characters did the voices and the... Yes?
I'm here to take your otaku card.
Why?
You expressed fondness for an anime dub.
Misogynist.
Dubs are, in my humble opinion, potentially better than subs at best representing the original Japanese anime. Yeah, you heard that right. Fight me. And Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid is a prime example of an anime dub done well. As a fellow translator, I second that. It's well written, funny, does not sound like a translation, is well localized rather than anglicized. It doesn't overly change the dialogue, the voice acting is good, and it amped up the meta, self-aware aspects of the show. Like in episode 1, when Kobayashi told Toru,
Another thing, you can't wear the same thing every day like you're in some anime. You're going to have to change clothes too.
The Dragon Maid dub adaptation also added to the original humor of the show with some hilarious original jokes and cute wordplay.
There, here. How to Tame Your Dragon.
You'll never know unless you try. Could you, would you, for the new year?
I could not, would not. Now let it go.
In short, it captured the flavor of the original Japanese version very well. And I think it's important to remember what Markey did well in her adaptation of Dragon Maid before we proceed to perform our autopsy on it. And on that note, let's get to the issues brought up by the angry fans.
There is so much that I could talk about in regards to what she's experienced, but to save time, I'll at least highlight a few things she says and show you clips if necessary. She talks about 3 specific lines that many complain about being SJW, and those are the cultural appropriation thing, the slut shame thing, and the patriarchy thing. Like the cartoon cipher, her take on the patriarchy line didn't have much to do with politics, but the kind of argument she made was more about what the butt of the joke was, and who should have been the one to make the punchline in response to why Lukua covered up.
You may have already seen this analysis somewhere online before, but the phrase literally translated means, everyone always tells me to cover up, so I lessened my skin exposure. Notice how the everyone and many other words in this sentence are in parentheses, and that is because of the verb iwareru, which is the passive voice version of the verb you, or to say. Japanese speakers in general use passive voice much more often than English speakers, and often as localizers we have to change their dialogue from passive voice to active voice so that it sounds more natural in English. So, since Luoka is using passive voice here, she is not specifying who told her, let alone what that person or persons was telling her. See how vague Japanese can be and how that sometimes forces a translator to do a lot of interpretation on what the character or the show writer was thinking when translating the sentence? I don't know, I think that's sort of a relevant point to bring up at this juncture. This questionable entity that was telling Luoka stuff could have been anybody. If we change that line from passive voice to active voice, the line could be, Kobayashi always tells me to cover up, or you always tell me to cover up, or random people always tell me to cover up, or society at large always tells me to cover up, which is how a translator could have arrived at patriarchy, even though she did not mention kafu chose in her original dialogue. It is not even 100% clear that this person, or persons, was telling Luoka to cover up. They could have been telling her anything. They could have been telling her Coke is better than Pepsi, or that she should become an astronaut. I'm always told leaves out so much key information that would be really important in an English sentence, so as localizers, we have to do our best to fill in the gaps. So the real question is, did Luoka change her clothes under duress by the oppressive patriarchy? Was she lamenting this fact? And would she be aware of and use the word patriarchal? If we're being generous, yes, Luoka might have used a word like patriarchal. She might have finally decided to find out why everyone drags her away and done a little research on the internet and found out that our patriarchal society controls us and tells us what we can and cannot wear as women. That no one will take us seriously if our skin is exposed, and that if boys and men are tempted by our bodies, then the onus is on us to cover up, rather than on them to respect our bodily autonomy and let us dress as we please. But that wasn't the point of this scene. It was meant to be a continuation of the running gag that everyone keeps dragging Luoka away for dressing the way she does, but that Luoka doesn't understand why this is happening. And the joke here is that she may have covered up her skin, but her skin-tight sweatsuit is still showing off her big boobs in all their glory. Which is why Toru follows up this line with,
次は体を変えるといいですよ.
Give it a week, they'll be begging you to change back.
In the original Japanese version, Luoka, for not understanding how her body is sexualized, was the butt of the joke. But in the dub version, society, for fetishizing Luoka's body, was the butt of the joke. To be honest though, I don't think this joke works in either version, actually. Agreed. The real problem here is Toru's line in both the Japanese and the English versions. Toru is not supposed to be in on the joke here. Usually, Kobayashi and Takiya are our voices of reason, who make little quips and jokes when our dragon characters fail to misunderstand aspects of Japanese or human culture. It really should have been Kobayashi with the punchline. I think the joke would have worked much better in both cases then.
So since she's fluent in Japanese and understands their culture, I can kinda see where she's coming from when she said Kobayashi could have been the one to throw the punchline. She's also aware of the "I'm not into women" line, as well as the "but we're both women" trope for Yuri stories, the dragon racist line, and how Jamie Marchi's performance as Luqua could potentially make her more flirtatious, which all led her to ask whether Dragon Maid is a feminist anime or anti-feminist anime.
So yes, the patriarchal joke really did come out of left field, pun intended. And of the 3 complaints raised about the dub, this one was definitely the— Whoa, wait a minute. 3 complaints? Yeah, the 3 anti-SJW complaints that this video is addressing. Oh, but there's more complaints than that, sweetie. Love your hair, by the way. Thanks. What complaints? Ms. Marchi has been accused of many things by the online mob. Of pushing a feminist agenda, of pushing a liberal agenda, of being mean to fans, of not caring about the original Japanese creators, of getting someone fired who didn't deserve it, of being a commie. But while Ms. Marchi awaits the verdict of the online mob for her appropriation of slut-shaming patriarchies, I would like to bring forth an offense of a far more nefarious nature. Ms. Marchi, it pained me to discover this, but you are guilty of one of the most cardinal sins in all of wokedom: queer erasure and joking about racism. She what now? If you really are our feminist SJW comrade, then explain this line.
It's you! I love you, Miss Kobayashi!
I'm not into women or dragons.
In the original Japanese, Kobayashi merely said, "Watashi wa onna nanda ga," ... which means, "But I am a woman, so ... And a few online SJWs, myself included, were not too happy about this change. The "but we're both girls" line is such a common trope in Yuri. How could Marchi miss that? In the original Japanese version, Kobayashi never explicitly said that she is not into women, because obviously she is either a lesbian or bi, because, spoilers, she does develop feelings for Toru by the end of the series. To have Kobayashi explicitly state that she is not into women is queer erasure, and I will not— But maybe she was only saying that she's not into women or dragons just to shut down Toru. Kind of like how a girl will say she has a boyfriend if a guy she doesn't like asks her out and she wants to get rid of him. Which is also wrong. Femmes should not have to hide behind fictitious boyfriends just to avoid being stalked or beaten up by the men they reject. Also, maybe Kobayashi just wasn't sure at this point that she was into women. Maybe she was closeted, and who and when to come out to is a very personal decision to be made. Well, what about this one then?
I'm not like a dragon racist or anything. I'm just not in the market right now to hire a maid.
What about it? Don't you see? She's trivializing racism, making light of the struggles of people of color. There was no such insensitivity in the original Japanese. What Kobayashi really said here was, Doragon daka nanda ka shiranga, watashi wa hito o yatou tsumori wa nai yo. Doragon daka nanda ka shiranga, which means, I don't know if you're a dragon or whatever, but she did not mention racism, let alone joke about it. But that was just a joke. I'm not finished yet. Why hasn't anyone acknowledged how borderline criminal Luoka's behavior is around Shota? And Marky kinda made Luoka's behavior even more flirtatious around him by having her call him Shota baby all the time.
Shota baby. Shota baby. Shota baby. Shota baby. Shota baby! You're my charm, Shota baby.
Just imagine if the genders were reversed here. What if you had some big Chad waving his beefy arms around a little moe girl? Everyone would be outraged. But we think Shota's plight is funny just because he's a boy? Talk about sexist double standards. Wait, so is Dragon Maid too SJW or too anti-SJW? You can't have it both ways. I'm starting to think like this is a lot of outrage for the sake of outrage. Oh, sweetie, have you ever been on the internet? Well, I do think it's important to take an anime's overall tone and messaging into account when you're translating it, since that will inform your word choices. Both the woke and the anti-woke crowd were accusing Jamie Marchi of being unfaithful to the original anime and its message. So I think the real question is Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid overall a feminist anime or an anti-feminist anime? Okay, I'm gonna need something stronger for this.
For a film to pass the Bechdel test, the movie must simply have the following. 1. It must have at least 2 female characters. 2. They must both have names. 3. They must talk to each other about something other than a man. The test is not a measure of how good or feminist a film is, but it does highlight just how male-dominated cinema really is.
Okay, so was Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid originally promoting a feminist agenda? At its heart, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid is a classic fish-out-of-water story that shows our world through the eyes of all-powerful beings and follows the connections they make with our human characters. It's an exploration of girl-on-girl romances, family, chosen family, and friendships. Now, the girl-on-girl romances could be queer empowerment,
or it could be because lesbians are hot.
Family is considered a more conservative theme, while chosen family is considered a more progressive concept.
Big floppy dragon titty fan service.
But in a way, this trope is almost meta-satire because Kobayashi has to make some quip about why dragons always have such amazing tits.
You've got amazing tits.
This show critiques Japanese society here and there, like when Kanna was shopping for school supplies and she questioned why everyone has to be the same. This tradition-preserving worldview is quite right-wing, so I would
take your top off again.
Okay, you're blocked.
Stupid bitch! Fat and ugly anyway.
Kobayashi works with computers and has a platonic male friend. This is rather progressive, letting the female lead of a show being more than just a pretty face who fawns over guys. Nah, she's just your stand-in for your average cis-het male protag of any seinen harem series. Okay, well then what about the fact that Dragon Maid features Norse mythology and witchcraft? Seems like the Christian right would be up in arms over such heresy. Dude, Japan is not hyper-Christian or anti-witchcraft like the West is. Well, what about Luoka's Boku pronouns then? Like I said before, that's more like a storytelling device to differentiate between your characters in a manga. Luoka isn't there to challenge gender norms and represent NBs. She's there for fan service. Well, it super passes the Bechdel test at least. Like almost every conversation in that show is between two female characters and not about men. Ah, Bechdel test, Schmechdel test. If that pop feminist test were at all valid, a movie consisting of two women talking about paint drying would be considered a feminist masterpiece. Look, I'm just trying to help you out. Just look at the mangaka, Cool Shojin... Kurusho Shinja. All his works, Komori-san Can't Decline, I Can't Understand What My Husband Is Saying, and Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid all fall into the same seinen, meta-satire, slice of life, and huge titties category. So no, Dragon Maid is not feminist. It's not anti-feminist either. It's not deep. It's not political. It's satirical otaku humor. So, given everything we know about the mangaka, the characters, the anime as a whole, at the very least, Luoka's patriarchal line was, in technical terms, bad. I'm sorry. So, where do we go from here?
After that, she shifts to a more honest analytic debate, what the point of who dubs are made for, how the internet's behavior is hurting not just Jamie and Funimation, but also the community, cautions people about the risks of machine translations or literal translations, and what Jamie and Funimation would really do if they did want to promote left-wing political agendas in every anime translation or dub.
I'm going to clarify here that Ethnic Weeb showed no hostility towards Jamie Marchi or even towards Funimation. He indeed encouraged those who agreed with him to be polite in voicing their disappointment towards Funimation. He also wasn't calling on Marchi to be fired. So the last thing I want is for everyone who sides with Marchi or Funimation to flood Ethnic Weeb's comment section with hate. And this video isn't just a response to Ethnic Weeb's video either. I don't mean to single him out here. His video just so concisely compiled all the complaints that it was a good reference. Besides him, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of anime fans who believe left-wing opinions are infecting the anime industry like a cancer. And there's a very vocal minority of this right-wing faction of weebs who has taken their outrage to more toxic levels.
When Gamergaters attacked me over a line in prison school that I neither wrote nor directed, my career as I knew it was over. Everything I wrote was gone over with a fine-tooth comb, looking for changes that could be twisted to an agenda that I never had. I received relentless hate for a handful of lines I wrote years ago. Overall, that's less than 1% of the lines that I've ever written while adapting scripts for anime. And while there's been some support, I've generally been left to deal with the harassment alone. It's also been made clear to me that if I did stand up for myself and refuse to take the harassment like a good girl, I would no longer have a job. Meanwhile, the harassment grew, and I was on a show that used the term SJW. The harassers assumed I must have been behind it. I did not write or direct that show. Like Prison School, the writers and director were men, but yet again, that did not matter. I was the one that received the death threats, and I was the one targeted in a continued public campaign of harassment.
Neither Marchi nor her peers in the translation or localization industry are hyper-partisan SJW monsters whose sole purpose in life is to ruin anime for right-wing anime fans. We're anime fans ourselves, and it hurts us very much when anime fans, people who love what we love, demonize us, assume we're all bad faith actors, and go over our work with a fine-tooth comb, hoping to find some word or phrase that can be construed as left-wing so that they can cancel us over it. I mean, aren't conservatives the ones who are supposed to hate cancel culture? Just a few weeks ago, I was translating the line of a protag from a popular anime franchise. He was advocating for open borders and an aggressive redistribution of wealth to save a country that was on the brink. And there I was, grateful for once that I'm under NDA and not credited for my translations. Because I knew, as I translated that very left-wing line into English, that the anti-SJW weeb mob might just assume that that was me inserting my politics into the translation, and that they would come after me for it. Which brings me to a very key point. Most non-Japanese anime fans don't speak Japanese. Which means all they have to go off of is a sub versus a dub, or a pro sub versus a fan sub, to determine how accurate or how authentic a translation is. This belongs to anime fans of all political ideologies, and I don't mean to single out just the conservatives. As I illustrated earlier, sometimes the woke mob can also show up to cancel a translator over a problematic word or what they perceive as erasure of a character's sexuality. We get our fair share of apolitical complaints too, like when fans get angry over subtitles leaving out suffixes like san or senpai, or when Higurashi fans got mad at Funimation, once again, for the translator translating ni as big brother, when they were used to it just being left as ni in the OG translation. And because anime fans don't understand Japanese, and they rely on us, the translators, to understand the anime they love so much, it is crucial that they trust us to respect anime and to make the translations as faithful to the original as possible. And when they perceive the work of one of us as unfaithful to the anime, that has a domino effect on the rest of us. But since it's already taken me like a half hour just to explain 3 questionable lines in an anime, and it would take 5 years at least of intensive study for every single anime fan to really understand what makes a faithful translation in the first place, the best we can do is just ask that anime fans trust us.
I have something to say. Too bad somebody blocked me earlier.
Okay, unlock. What did you want to say?
I don't trust you. You're all corrupt. We should just have machines translate our anime. That would be the purest, least biased translation possible.
Are you sure you want that?
Certainly! Torotan's maid level is spray!
Did you misunderstand what you dislike? Nasty. Break up! Return it!
Well, then at least make the translations as literal as possible.
Again, are you sure you want that?
Always being told. Therefore, suppressed exposure.
Next, change body is good.
Well, at least don't insert your politics into your translation.
Oh, please. If my fellow translators and I really had a mission to insert our politics into every anime we translated, the Dragon Maid dub would be a pretty pathetic attempt at leftist propaganda, if you ask me. If Marky really wanted to insert feminist propaganda into the Dragon Maid dub, there would have been more than 3 questionable lines for starters, and it would have sounded a little more something like this.
Kobayashi! The real crime is that your salary is 70% of mine! We should go on strike!
Agreed! While we're at it, let's demand that my boss pays for my birth control!
Or this.
You're a slut.
Don't be a swerve, Kanna. Sex work is real work.
Thanks! I've seen
you're
the
welcome.
light.
Or how about some actual leftism?
What are you wearing that for?
I was at the general strike, marching for a $25 an hour minimum wage and a Green New Deal.
Go get him, comrade.
Thanks.
However, I can certainly let you know one thing, Miss Kobayashi. Your boss is exploiting your labor. If you unionized and democratized the workplace, then you would be free from this modern-day slavery.
We must abolish capitalism.
So what? I'm supposed to praise you for just not outright trolling fans with politics? That's a pretty low bar.
No, you're supposed to praise us for translating anime in the first place so you have a chance to see it at all. Remember what Marky said about all the hate going towards less than 1% of all of the lines that she wrote? A lot of fans who came to her defense made the same point, and it's a good one, so let's unpack it. The average episode of anime has about 325 lines in it, give or take. At 13 episodes long, Dragon Maid has approximately 4,225 lines of dialogue in the entire dub. Only 3 of those lines were SJW-ish in nature, and I think after my analysis at least, it's pretty fair to say that only really 1 of those 3 lines was truly cringe. This means that only about 1 out of 4,225 lines, or that's about 0.02% of the entire dub translation was bad. Or put another way, this means that 99.98% of the lines in the Dragon Maid dub were good.
Yeah,
But one bad line is one bad line too many. It's a slap in the face to all the Japanese writers that worked so hard on the series.
Yeah, I've seen this talking point come up a lot. Curious how it's never backed up by an actual quote from a Japanese animator or writer. Now, snark aside, it is possible that the odd Japanese animator or writer would be irked by the direction a translator took with their series. After all, manga authors are sometimes irked by the directions that anime studios take with their works when they're adapted for an anime in the first place. But once a work of art is adapted into another work of art by another creator, that new creator does have artistic license to change some things, especially with anime dubs. A dub is more than just a translation, it's a whole other adaptation. Having said that, however, speaking from personal experience, any deviation to a script has to go through many channels for it to be approved. On any given localization team for a game or an anime or a manga, you'll usually have one or more translators, one or more editors, and the original client, which is usually the Japanese studio. The Japanese studio reviews these sorts of changes, such as the tsundere to fragile male ego line in the House of Fata Morgana, before they are approved. We generally work off of glossaries of terms approved by the original Japanese creators, and we are generally in close communication with them throughout the process. And sometimes, believe it or not, the original Japanese creators of anime and games actually ask us to change their work. The bulk of what I have translated the last 8 years is otome games, or dating sim games for girls and women. And the Japanese game developers themselves explicitly asked me to omit profanity in my translations and to soften up any dialogue that may sound too sexist for a Western audience. Let me repeat that. The Japanese game developers asked me to omit profanity and soften up any dialogue that might be too sexist for a Western audience. And why would they do this? Well, because the purpose of otome games is to make girls blush and get hot over the romantic stories with the guys. They realize that what turns on Japanese women might turn off non-Japanese women, and they don't mind a little tweaks to their dialogue here and there to achieve their purpose. And as for the profanity censorship, they just want to make their product more marketable. My point is, the Japanese developers are not oblivious victims whose art is being desecrated without their consent or control. They are very much a part of the process, and they would not give a studio the rights to produce an English language version of their content if they did not like what that studio was doing. So claiming that the Japanese creators are being victimized is frankly disrespectful to them. As a lifelong Star Wars fan, I know how it feels to have a story you've loved your entire life be ruined by a studio or a writer. I understand that we all just want our anime to be the best it can be, and we feel betrayed when it falls short of our personal expectations. I think it's okay to be offended by the artistic choice made by a dub scriptwriter or a voice actor or a manga letterer, but what's not okay is to harass the creators of something you love because of minor creative differences. Frankly, there are much more substantial injustices in the anime industry that are worthy of your outrage. The gripes I covered in this video essay all fall under the culture war, and in the year of our Lord 2020, it's still going strong. And while I do care about the issues in the culture war, I ultimately think that people obsess over these things far too much, especially on social media.
It's all a distraction. The upper 1% is getting richer while the rest of us are getting poorer. This is divide and conquer.
And even within the context of anime translations, the divide seems to come down to the culture war. But let me present to you some injustices that are far more worthy of your outrage. A changed line here or there does very little to a story, especially if those lines were jokes.
It's not like having Lukua say the word patriarchal once during a bad joke significantly changed her character, her relationship to the other characters, or the overall story. It was one bad joke, not the final season of Game of Thrones.
And Kobayashi saying, "I'm not into women or dragons," didn't really change her character either, since the point of that line was that she was rejecting Toru, not stating some ultimate truth about herself. And I'm gonna jump out on a limb here and say that Kaoru's "worthy of my grace" and "I like you" lines were not queer erasure either, since most of his queerness was expressed by his actions rather than his words. And it's not like his line was translated as, "I like you as a friend," or I like you in a completely straight way. Queer erasure in anime dubs really is a problem, though, when it actually happens.
How'd you guys meet then? We're cousins. We've been inseparable since we were born. We can almost read each other's minds.
Like best friends?
So you see, I'm not lonely without a boyfriend. I don't think about it at all.
I remember it vividly. It was with Brad, the cutest guy in the school.
I'm trying to tell you that your dear cousin Sailor Neptune is the holder of a pure heart crystal.
The fact that sailors Uranus and Neptune are in love is actually kinda really significant to the plot of Sailor Moon S. So making them cousins and erasing their romance and their queerness really did damage the story, and it is a slap in the face to queer girls who were inspired and empowered by Uranus and Neptune's relationship. But true extreme censorship like this rarely happens anymore in anime. You'll probably only find it in dubs for kids shows nowadays, and even then, it's not because the writer was trying to push some kind of agenda. It's because of the broadcast rules and standards that were put in place so that corporations can rock the boat as little as possible and make as much money as possible. Capitalism.
Now, I have a few things to say about these things. If I'm being honest, I think Asaratha HS, the cartoon cipher, and Sarah Moon present their arguments in a much more balanced way compared to Rev and Asmongold. The two latter YouTubers always use the same rage bait tropes and strategies to get people to click on their content so that they make themselves look like they know what they're talking about. And since they're far-right political YouTubers themselves, according to my sources, probably with their own agendas as well, it isn't really helping their cases either. Whereas the three former personalities' arguments are very refreshing, critical, nuanced, and welcoming. I also like that they don't just focus on the patriarchy line. For example, in the same cartoon cipher video, the narrator noted in regards to the "I'm not into women" line, while some people might argue that Jamie Marchi wanted to make Dragon Maid less lesbian, it's important to note that she was also the scriptwriter for and had a role in one of the most openly Yuri shows, Yurikoma Arashi.
Now, Jamie could very easily go on Twitter tomorrow and say she intentionally wants to make gay anime less gay, thus rendering this whole thing moot. I mean, provided she isn't telling obvious jokes. However, she also wrote the script for and had a main role in the dub for Yurikoma Arashi, probably one of the most openly Yuri shows to have aired around that time.
Yuri!
And while that dub definitely suffers in other departments, one thing that the script doesn't do is try to cover up the very explicit affections between people of the same sex, which maybe makes this situation even more confusing.
You really love her, don't you, sweetie?
Yeah, I do.
Because of this, I just can't think of any reason as to why Jamie would want to tone down the lesbianism in Dragon Maid. Ultimately, Kobayashi is rejecting Toru's feelings initially, but she ends up falling in love with her throughout the series. In terms of Jamie Marchi's Twitter thread that Sarah narrated about the Gamergate and prison school thing, I wanted to know more about what was going on with that, so I looked it up and found Jamie retweeting a video someone uploaded about what she had to say in response to the Funimation dub hate at Sock Anime 2018. And it was a long explanation of what she's been through. Thank you for sharing this. I think the only reason I have guts is because I didn't have any other choice. When Gamergaters attacked me over a line in prison school that I neither wrote nor directed, my career as I knew it was over. Everything I wrote was gone over with a fine-tooth comb looking for any changes that could be twisted to an agenda I never had. The days of adapting for shows like Panty and Stocking, Hetalia, Spice and Wolf, and others were gone. There seems to be little complaints with shows I wrote before Prison School came out. After that, well, I received relentless hate for a handful of lines I wrote years ago. Overall, that's less than 1% of the lines I have ever written while adapting scripts for anime. Statistically, their complaints should be a compliment. 99% is a pretty high approval rating. Instead, I am relentlessly criticized. If you follow anime, you've seen the memes with the changes I've made for adaptation. And while there has been some support, I've been generally left to deal with the harassment alone. It's been my problem. It had also been made clear to me that if I did stand up for myself and refuse to take the harassment like a good girl, I would no longer have a job. Meanwhile, the harassment grew. I was in a show that used the term SJW. The harassers assumed I must have been behind it. I did not write or direct that show. Like Prison School, the writers and director were men, but yet again, that did not matter. I was the one who received death threats. I was the one targeted in a continued public campaign of harassment. And again, I was left to deal with it alone. Believe it or not, I ignore the vast majority of the harassment I receive. Before February 2019, I almost never responded. Don't feed the trolls, right? Yet, my silence never silenced them, nor prevented them from telling me to kill myself. That doesn't mean I didn't have strong opinions or was silent elsewhere. I was doing what I thought what I was supposed to do. What I was told to do, to shut them up. It didn't work. It never does. My silence has only ever empowered them. So if you wonder why I'm so loud, why I fight back, why I scream my opinion, it's because I have to. Otherwise I won't be heard, and I won't let monsters online and certain elements of the industry make me feel like my voice isn't worthy of being heard. You shouldn't either. To those who have been supportive, thank you. You've kept me from feeling completely abandoned, and I will always be grateful for your kindness and empathy. I wish there were more people like you in this world. After reading that and doing more research, I found out the Gamergate line thing came from Funimation's original version, I repeat, original version, of the series Prison School. That line was spoken by Anzu Yokoyama, who was voiced by Colin Clinkenbeard.
Whoa, pump the brakes, Arthur Fonzarelli. Have you got a stick up your ass? Or are you one of those dumbass Gamergate creep shows?
So people blame Jamie for writing the Gamergate line because, as seen on Anime News Network, she was the lead writer for the show. But it also listed Tyson Reinhardt, and as it turns out, he was the one who actually wrote the Gamergate line, not Jamie Markey. Because people blame her for writing this, even though she really didn't, they seem to assume that being the lead writer means she at least wrote most of the script, right? No, not exactly. There's a difference between a lead writer and a script writer. As a script writer, while the job is, obviously, to write the actual dialogue for the performance of the characters, the lead writer's job is to supervise each script for approval or guidance for rewriting before the recording process begins. Because of this, Jamie mentioning she never wrote the Gamergate line nor directed Prison School made me question, is this why she calls her attackers misogynists?
If I'm making misogynists and Nazis angry, then I'm doing all right.
I'd say maybe. After all, she said that it didn't matter whether the scriptwriter or director was a man, and the viewers put the blame all on her. But even as the lead writer, is it really Jamie's fault for not speaking up against it? How would she know if there would be toxic backlash online when she was praised for her writing on Panty and Stocking, Hetalia, and Spice and Wolf? I'm going to highlight yet another YouTuber who supports anime localization. She calls herself Red Bard, and she uploaded a video called Translation, Localization, Censorship, and You. She says she's spoken to multiple translators, editors, and ADR directors, and they all said that even if they wanted to use anime dubs to promote an agenda, it would have been more difficult than trying to stay as accurate to the Japanese version as they possibly could.
Almost every translator, editor, and ADR director that I spoke to was quick to point out that even if they wanted to use their work to promote an agenda, between the eyes of their editors, actors, directors, and the fans, it'd be extremely hard for them to get away with it, and that's to say nothing of the tremendous risk they'd be putting their career at. And all for what? To change the wording slightly in a single scene? To quote Nathaniel Hiroshi Thrasher, to realistically promote an agenda, you need the story to support it on a thematic level. Otherwise, it's just a bumper sticker, and literally nobody has ever had their mind changed by a bumper sticker.
To support an agenda on a thematic level sounds like severely altering the story and dialogue. And when I think about it, again, It sounds even more difficult than trying to stay as accurate to the author's intent, and even more risky than the occasional political joke. In fact, according to Tyson Reinhardt, that's what he intended the Gamergate line to be. When asked on why he wrote that line, he explained he thought it was appropriate for the scene while fitting the mouth flaps and found it funny. So maybe Jamie thought it was funny too. But hey, humor is subjective. If you don't like it, that's fine, but to accuse them of shoehorning politics or promoting a left-wing propaganda agenda is another thing, and dare I say, worse. After all, like Sarah Moon said, one bad joke is not the same thing as completely changing Neptune and Uranus' relationship in Sailor Moon S. All that aside, Colin Clinkenbeard recorded the scene with Anzu Yokoyama, completely removing the Gamergate line, but going back to that same Red Bard video, she said that even then people didn't forgive Funimation for doing that and were still mad at them.
The controversial line was eventually removed in later releases, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people forgave them for this.
Have you got a stick up your ass? Or is that your pathetic attempt at talking to an older girl?
So here's what I find even more confusing. When Funimation records the same scenes to change the lines for the home video releases, people still hold the same grudge against them, but when someone uses AI voices to generate Jamie's voice, redo the patriarchy line, and program Lukua's voice to say the exact same line in the Japanese version, people approve it and label it as fixed?
What's with that outfit? Oh, everyone was always saying something to me, so I tried toning it down for exposure. How is it? You should try changing your body next.
What kind of lame sense does this make? Or are people just using this as a way to threaten Jamie in the hopes of getting rid of her? How does the joke about arrogance help anything?
It's no wonder those annoying voice actors are upset.
They're all so arrogant and annoying.
Nah, just the Western ones.
Bro, I wasn't expecting that. Damn, that's really good.
Where do we go from here? Well, simply put, what I learned is that anime localization is a lot more important than many screamy YouTubers make it out to be. It's okay to dislike it, but again, labeling these people as promoting an agenda or as if they hate anime is disrespectful and bad faith criticism. As this Twitter user puts it, you can enjoy subs without bashing English dubs. It's not a hard thing to do. I watch both, but I don't act superior to anybody. In fact, did you know that Disney and Pixar localized their animated films for other cultures, including Japan? Take, for example, the movie Inside Out. As a child, Riley's father tries to feed her broccoli, which she dislikes. She's also grossed out when she sees broccoli on a slice of pizza. Of course, this occurs in the American version, but in Japan, children love broccoli. From the looks of it, unlike some Western countries, which usually overcook it and lead to a mushy texture and stronger, less appealing flavor, Japanese mothers typically lightly steam or blanch broccoli to keep its bright green color, crisp texture, and mild flavor. Heck, they even use dressings like soy sauce or sesame dressing to enhance flavor even more. So, what do Japanese kids hate? Bell peppers. Mainly, green bell peppers. These have different flavors and scents that don't go with Japanese cooking. So they swapped it from broccoli to green peppers to make Riley relatable to Japanese audiences. So because of this, to anyone who says don't localize my anime, that's like telling Disney to not localize their films. The only thing those kinds of people do is make the content an awkward experience for foreign audiences. I would also like to point out to those who say that there should be a new American anime studio run by Japanese people, as if they think they will adapt the dub scripts to somehow directly say the same things the original characters said. That's kind of a naive thing for them to say, Because, like what Sarah Moon said, sometimes Japanese executives request the localizers to change some things for the American version. I mean, Gen Fukunaga, the guy who created Funimation in the first place, is Japanese-born, and I haven't really seen him voice any concerns about any changes made. So he understands the difference between both cultures, right? As for AI translations and dubs, I agree that this is a bad idea to use it to replace localizers and dub voice actors because literal translations will, in fact, miss the cultural meaning of what the characters were saying. Anyone who sees this as an opportunity to intimidate and get rid of human translators and localizers is just asking for bad translations and lazy work. AI dub voices also don't carry out extreme emotion, and I don't think adjustments of the performance as human voice actors. All that will do is just take away their love for voice acting, as well as need to make a living and create unnatural dialogue for the mouth flaps. When it comes to the word woke, I was getting so confused of what people were talking about. From what I've seen, the term used to refer to awareness of racial prejudice and discrimination, mainly around African Americans or brown people. As time went on, it apparently changed to describe a larger awareness of social inequalities around sexism, the LGBTQ+ community, and other injustice systems. But for me, I felt like people have been using this term to describe things they don't like and get butthurt over. Funny thing is, while I was watching Asaratha HS's video, he was basically analyzing different examples of people calling something woke and pointing out the hypocrisy of calling other animes like One Piece or Sailor Moon for not being political.
What even is woke? The answer you get will change depending on who you ask, and usually quite broadly. Some will say that titans of the anime industry like Miyazaki are woke conservatives for not sexualizing his characters, just for another person to just as easily turn around and say, actually, he isn't woke at all. Some will cry a line about how Gundam became woke because of diversity even though it's had LGBT characters since its inception. But simultaneously, One Piece somehow isn't woke.
One Piece deals with issues like environment corruption, social inequality, racism, and abuse of power.
And Sailor Moon was actually never anything political. Let's just disregard, some of these apparently woke comments.
Sailor Moon contains themes of feminism, such as strong female leads and challenging traditional gender norms. In fact, Japan has a lot of political issues, and there's all kinds of them that inspire their manga and anime. But again, when it comes to Rev or Asmongold using the word woke against Jamie or other localizers, Asaratha came to the same conclusion. Anti-localizers aren't mad at Jamie and Tyson for inserting politics or pushing an agenda. It's that they're mad that they made a joke or a reference to politics they don't like.
The concept of wokeness seems pretty nebulous and intentionally ill-defined, so that it can be retroactively applied to literally anything that has any political messaging you may not like, as long as you actually even notice the political messaging to begin with. There is a big push to keep out the Westernification of anime, to keep Western politics out of fiction, things like LGBT representation, reining in the objectification of women, women's rights, or other things deemed culturally progressive, such as the two previous lines people took issue with in translation. This might come as a surprise, but anime is actually pretty political 9 times out of 10. Vinland Saga received a lot of backlash for its second season for being woke because the protagonist didn't want to kill people anymore. However, you might notice an issue with this, that this is a story itself being criticized as woke, not a translation, localization, or dub line. In fact, some of the most popular anime of the 2020s have overtly political, non-conservative messaging. Chainsaw Man's Gun Devil was specifically based around the issue of US gun control said by Fujimoto himself. Attack on Titan's final season is quite literally filled to the brim with political messaging, even if it might miss the mark for some people. Zom 100 was entirely about the screwed up work-life balance of the Japanese worker, and the freedom one might feel when breaking free. Edge Runners literally kicked off by criticizing the idea of healthcare being run like a business. Oh shit, that's me. And Jujutsu Kaisen regularly criticizes the conservatives that run the show behind the scenes. One Piece is fucking One Piece. All of these anime, besides maybe Attack on Titan to some, clearly have some non-traditional slant to them that one might expect coming from Japanese media, a famously conservative country. Because Japanese people aren't a monolith. The second biggest party in the nation being self-described as liberal, with other progressive parties participating, such as, I don't know, the Communist Party of Japan. Wokeism or whatever had infected Japan long ago, and stories as early as Godzilla had been a window into the somewhat modern politics of Japan. Shonen Jump has publicly available guidelines that limit the discrimination of ethnicity, gender, sexuality, and more. I guess Shonen Jump is woke? Woke is just a term that has been boiled down to an almost nothing burger. Like when Jurassic Park was called woke because they showed off the new movie with a picture of Chris Pratt and some woman who happens to be black. At the end of the day, it's not the translations that matter. It's not some consistent ideology behind the term woke. It's just politics that I don't like, as they posture about issues they want you to believe they believe in, such as accuracy to the source material, censorship, and cancel culture.
Well, but I mean, it doesn't necessarily work. It gets people upset. It gets them angry. It makes them fearful about threats and makes them afraid of things that can't even really be defined.
Let's face it, Funimation has localized most of their anime dubs, including Dragon Ball, One Piece, Fairy Tail, My Hero Academia, and many more. To make an example, let's talk about the character of Juvia Loxer. Regarding her devotion and obsession with Grey Fullbuster as a yandere type of character, in the Japanese version of the anime, she often refers to him as Grey-sama. The term sama in the Japanese language is used to refer to people with immense respect or admiration. It's more extreme than the term san, which is the most commonly used to be polite with other people, regardless of age, gender, or social status, and is similar to Mr., Miss, and Mrs. Americans, however, don't say those things, and that's when the dub writers and voice actress Brina Palencia have to think of a way to present Juvia in the same image based on how Americans address people they have affections for. So, in the English version of Fairy Tail, Juvia calls him Grey Darling or Grey My Love. Of course, Sama doesn't directly translate to either of those terms, but they do have similar connotations. As a result, this is an example of localizing anime done well. Here's why I think it's important to separate each scenario of how localization is done or how scripts are adapted. On a Reddit discussion I found about Jamie Markey, Dragon Maid, Asmongold, and AI translations, somebody phrased the explanation like this. Funimation always had a bad reputation of doing crappy translations. When you word it like that, it sounds like they always do a poor job of adapting their dubs with every anime they produce, and have never done anything right, which is clearly not true. When you only focus on the occasional bad joke to politics people don't like, without acknowledging examples of localization done well, that's when things become confusing, toxic, and misleading. Now, some of you might be thinking, what about the TikTok video about Jamie saying she doesn't give a F to Asmongold? Well, I can assure you I'm aware of that.
Recently, some followers of Asmongold have been criticizing me and demanding answers regarding a line I wrote in 2017 and the answer I gave to a question at a panel a year or two later. If you don't know who Asmongold is, he is a streamer with well over 2 million followers. Now, since Asmongold was gracious enough to respond to the criticism and the demands for answers he's been receiving regarding his involvement with Soft Giving and their controversy, I thought it's only fair that I respond to his followers in kind. Well, who gives a shit? Somebody makes an allegation against me and now somehow I have to respond to it? No, I don't have to say anything. Who gives a fuck? Thank you for your time.
Okay, so, sure. That was crass and insensitive in its own way, but comparing this to her accusation against Vic Mignogna, the way Jamie responded to Asmongold is not proof that she really did destroy Vic's career. It doesn't even erase the video evidence of him demonstrating how he pulled her hair, nor erase the document explaining why admitting this is bad for his case. These are completely different issues, like, come on, you guys! That's not to say that I'm defending Jamie for what she said. Of course I don't think that was cool of her to do that, but pointing out Jamie cursing at Asmongold doesn't automatically make Vic Mignogna not a sex pest. I'm sorry, but that's just not how this world works. Not sure if you guys know, but around the same time Jamie responded to Asmongold, Vic behaved in a similar way in an interview with Peter Pischke. In it, he brags about how he's not a prima donna, while simultaneously acting like one.
All right, ready? You could call any event that I've ever attended and ask them what kind of crazy, prima donna demands I made, and they would tell you none, because I don't. I don't make demands at all, and I don't think I'm a prima donna, and yet, this is where we're going with that, and yet, there are people out there spreading garbage that I'm a prima donna. And I'm like, what do you base that? First of all, who are you? You don't even know what you're talking about. And second of all, I have never been a prima donna, but let me tell you what happens. When you aspire to a certain level in any field, you automatically subject yourself to ridicule, jealousy, professional jealousy, and people that just, there are people out there, Peter, believe it or not, that just can't stand to see other people succeed. It just rubs them the wrong way. You know what I mean? It's just like, why should he get to...
You know what this sounds like? Something a prima donna would say. Everybody's just jealous of me. That's something a prima donna would say. Oh, no, there's been stories about Vic being needy and annoying and shitty to staff, convention staff for years. Side note, he admitted to that. Did he not say that he's maybe he didn't treat people always the greatest and he had off days and stuff too?
Yes, he did. He just didn't think it was as frequent as everybody said it was.
Organizers at conventions, meanwhile, shared stories of unprofessional behavior, such as overstaying his panel time and yelling at staffers. Any truth to that?
Occasionally.
Todd Haberkorn and Monica Rial revealed that Vic was so rude to these staffers to the point where he made them cry.
And you had indicated you had sent Vic a couple of emails in the early 2000s. How many times did you try to address Vic's behavior with him?
It was more than just emails. We spoke in person. There were several accounts where he made handlers cry, yelled at staff, and so I was usually they joked and called me the Vic Whisperer, so I would go and calm him down and try to deal with the situation.
There's also video footage of him trying to rush the cast of the show Merlin to hurry up and finish their panel. Obviously, he's impatient and wants to get attention already, but he's trying not to raise his voice at them because he knows if people in public see him act like that, they will dislike him. So, when Vic, in this interview, insists he's not a prima donna and his accusers are just jealous of him, he pretty much makes the evidence around his accusations more and more obvious. Anyway, if you follow Chesh and watch her Vic Mignogna content, what she's explaining in her videos is that Vic is still angry and bitter about everything he lost because he refuses to accept the consequences of his behavior. So his defenders are sure that he's moved on from everything he lost, but when you look at how he's behaved recently, he's clearly contradicting them. Not to mention, when they click on a video of a fan having fun with Jamie or Monica at a convention, they still post an angry comment about how they backstabbed him. The point is, Jamie responding to Asmongold like that is not the same thing as Vic's constant bitterness. So if anime localization is more important than many YouTubers say, and the patriarchy line from Dragon Maid has nothing to do with Vic, what do I have left to say? Consumers are currently stuck with Crunchyroll becoming a monopoly, which in my opinion is a much bigger issue than Funimation terminating Vic and localizing anime. Monopolies are illegal because it reduces competition, which leads to higher prices, lower quality products, and lacking the need for improvement. Other controversies have started to arise, like the ones I mentioned at the start. In 2022, the YouTuber Enzo is Tired predicted that people were going to turn to pirate sites since Crunchyroll evolved into a monopoly. A January 5th, 2025 article on CBR revealed that Hi Anime, the world's biggest anime pirate site, exceeded both Disney Plus and Crunchyroll with more than 330 million subscribers. As seen on the title of this video, I created two hashtags, which I call Bring Back Funimation and Stop Watching Crunchyroll. It may sound crazy, but I created these as symbols to revolt against the harm Sony has caused. They're also for people who have different reasons for this. For example, Bring Back Funimation represents them rebranding, splitting with Crunchyroll, restoring competition, lower prices, and higher quality products. If you want that, I would suggest going with Bring Back Funimation. But if you want Crunchyroll to stop dominating the market but are not sure if Funimation will restore, I recommend going with Stop Watching Crunchyroll. Personally, I'm leaning more towards Bring Back Funimation, not just because of competition, but if Crunchyroll shuts down without Funimation rebranding, I fear that consumers will lose every classic dub they produced. The voice actors and translators need better treatment too. Funimation even paid their translators much better that they even credited them for their work. There were also reports of Funimation shifting towards remote recording during the 2020 pandemic. Because of this, I have an interesting conclusion. If Sony had left Crunchyroll alone at AT&T, Funimation could have used this as an opportunity to expand their employment across the states and allow people outside of Texas to audition for them without having to move there. But now that Crunchy absorbed them, they're adamant about in-studio recording. So after analyzing the importance of anime localization and looking at the legal evidence of Vic's numerous misconducts, I think I can safely come out and say these two things. The first is I'm legally allowed to wish Funimation was back and split with Crunchyroll all I want, no matter how unlikely that is. And the second is, even if they don't, and Funny Spirit still lives on within Crunchyroll, them shutting down is not a win for Vic and will not do him any justice. Yeah, that's right. I said it, and I'll say it again. Crunchyroll going out of business does not equal justice for Vic. Unfortunately, some people will go by that false belief, no matter what I say or how much evidence I try to show, because it satisfies their vanity, toxic devotion for him, and hatred for women, or at least the ones who had been victimized by Mignogna himself. In fact, when I made my video about David Wald's announcement of his termination with CR, somebody commented that in all caps out of arrogance. Problem is, like the patriarchy line with Jamie, the video and David himself have nothing to do with Vic, since he went to court and said he did all the things he was accused of, soliciting sex from fans at conventions, hiring prostitutes, cheating on his fiancée, pulling his coworkers by their hair, bullying staffers, and more. Again, his lawsuit was already over before it got anywhere. Additionally, the same person posted another comment celebrating David's resignation of playing Gajiel just because he's gay and was replaced by a straight voice actor. I don't know about you, but that kinda sounds like a homophobic thing to say, in my opinion. And for the record, I do not care if David Wald is gay. David Wald is Gajiel, and Gajiel is David Wald. Ultimately, I feel bad for Funimation. Vic Mignogna, Nick Rekieta, I Stand With Vic, and people who get butthurt over jokes they didn't like are responsible for attempting to destroy their reputation. So in the end, I've decided that localizing anime, occasional bad jokes, and removing a sex pest are way better than a monopoly hurting the market. I can't guarantee if Bring Back Funimation or Stop Watching Crunchyroll will make a difference as much as Kick Vic did. But even so, something has to be done to stop Sony and CR from hurting their employees, voice actors, consumers, the economy, and more. One of the best ways to do it is to cancel your Crunchyroll subscription. Of course, I can't make you do that. That's a personal decision you have to make. I'm just saying that Crunchyroll monopolizing the anime industry is an even bigger issue than the other controversies Funimation had combined. Too bad they're not allowed to be human, because every culture war sub-purist wants them to, quote, get it right the first time every time. Whatever get it right is supposed to mean. And it doesn't mean make the dubs more accurate to the subs, because that's impossible. Preferring subs over dubs is perfectly fine, but gaslighting them as promoting non-existent agendas just because of a joke you didn't like is another thing. If you want to know more why I'm not on Vic Mignogna's side, I recommend checking out my own videos addressing him and the people against him. So anyway, if you had to pick, which hashtag would you be on? Bring back Funimation? Or stop watching Crunchyroll? One way or another, I hope something changes and Crunchyroll's monopoly is stopped. But what do I know? I'm just an individual YouTube personality with my own dreams, so thanks for watching, I guess.